Yeah, so Venom's like a little shockwave super. He usually can't do anything until his shadow on the floor gets back to him, but it gets canceled by FS Dash here. So when it gets back to him after starting another one after FS Dash, he recovers like immediately. So whenever you do a fly screen off this, you can just do another one, and you get some tricky safe pressure. Okay, riddle me this: was that a gimmick? What about this? Okay, so recently, a friend of mine asked me if I thought if another friend of ours, if his team in Marvel 2 was a gimmick. I gave my answer at the time. It was a little long-winded, but I'm going to do something even more long-winded and deliberate on my thoughts, musings, conclusions on the topic in a video format. Here is what I think. Looking at the dictionary definition, I found the Merriam-Webster and Oxford definitions to be oddly flattering to the term gimmick. This is just not what I know a gimmick to be. The first definition is really the closest, which would be a mechanical device for secretly and dishonestly controlling gambling. But the other definitions are an important feature not immediately apparent, an ingenious and usually new scheme or angle, or a trick or device used to attract business or attention. It seems that like the literal definition of gimmick is like a novelty. It is something that hasn't been seen before, and that is like its primary attribute. So if you're anything like me, then this catches you kind of off guard, because in my lived experience, this isn't really how the term gimmick is used. I know gimmick personally to be a bit more of a four-letter word. It's an insult, and it's generally used to be dismissive, usually of mid-tiers, and to sort of hand-wave their viability away like one would a bad fart. Okay, so one, we know that gimmick is not a nice thing to say, right? Nobody means it as a compliment, and if somebody means it that way, it's not going to be taken that way. Two, in order to be a gimmick, a strategy must have a certain level of potency. It must be powerful in order to be labeled as a gimmick. We know this because Dark Sakura isn't a gimmick because it's not powerful enough to influence the course of a match. Strategies like the Hulk Infinite, or even like a character like Cammy, these are considered potent enough, and thus can be labeled as a gimmick. In the past, this usually meant that a strategy usually had to find like competitive success in order to sort of reach the point of requiring discussion. In order for a term to be labeled as a gimmick, it needed to be discussed in the first place, right? Which is why strategies have to be powerful. But now that there's less competition, that's not necessarily as true. In the case of my friend Madru, if that wasn't obvious, there isn't really a lot of tournaments for him to get results from. So, like successful tournament results aren't a necessity for his team to be discussed as a gimmick or not. Also, you aren't going to use the term gimmick to describe something that's bad, because you're going to use the term bad. But Gamer Jim, I hear you say, how are you not saying that this is bad? How can you affirm something's competitive viability and hand wave it away in the same breath? Isn't that something of a contradiction in terms? To which I replied, Gamer Jim is my father, just call me Jim. And then I would compliment you on your astute observation. The answer to this little riddle is that there are only guns to be found in the knife fight that is Marvel 2. Some of the strongest strategies in all fighting games are pitted against one another in Marvel 2. A lot of these are still notorious to this day, and a lot of the player base at this point is veterans. So when these people are calling something a gimmick, it's important to remember that they're saying, like, it's good, but I wouldn't let that shit happen to me, though. When I spoke with G Concepts about this, he referred to these kind of things as knowledge checks, and I do think that while prior knowledge of these strategies will help you beat them, the real border that I can draw between a strategy powerful enough to be deemed viable for competitive play, etc., and a gimmick, one might say, is ambiguity in the strategy. Strong strategies allow you to both back away and approach. You basically have options and can stance as if you're taking one option. A lot of competitive players call this like showing a look, like you're going to take one approach, whereas a gimmick really has exactly one look, and once you kind of show that hand, there's really no backing out. A great example is like Juggernaut has to do the power up glitch. Inevitably, this topic leads to people calling Magneto a gimmick. The weight that holds is relevant to the prospect that it's a knowledge check, right? Like, because if you do know that Magneto is going to high-low you, then it's really not that bad to deal with, right? As long as you've dealt with it before, you know how to handle it. But once again, the thing that Magneto is going for him that like Rogue doesn't is ambiguity. He doesn't have to do it. On that same note, if you look at someone like VDO, the reason he's able to compete at a high level and the reason he's not labeled a gimmick is because he creates ambiguity in his play. His specialty is his target switch, his ability to switch between attacking the assist, punishing the assist, and fighting the point character. Now, given the week or so that I marinated on this topic, I really found myself coming to a conclusion, which is that more important to how we define a gimmick isn't the strategy itself, but rather actually our own ego. And when people say ego in Marvel 2, they usually think that it's an inflated ego. It's not what I mean here. And for the record, I think that ego in Marvel 2 is actually a much deeper topic that I just don't have time to really get all the way through today. But I think ego is intrinsic to Marvel 2 in a way that it isn't in other fighting games. More on this another time. What I'm talking about is that assertion of the strategy's good, but it's not good enough to work on me. You can say that and be entirely correct if you're, say, Smooth Viper and you're talking about, the Curse Infinite. I do think that, like, colloquially, I think in general we can agree that gimmick is going to refer to, that level of play of, like, Blackheart, BB Hood, Juggernaut. I think if you use that term to refer to those kinds of teams, I think that's okay. I think those teams are one-dimensional. But in my heart of hearts, what I think is true is that it's a term that we all really define for ourselves. And I'm curious what you guys think. Where does the line get drawn for you? What is a gimmick and what is strong competitive play and what is just bad? If you were to make sense of it or create rules about it, where would you draw those lines? Finally, this is my first time doing stuff like this. I don't know if you guys like it. I don't know who this is for. I think it's for me mostly. I want to do more essay style, I want to make content about Marvel 2 that isn't just footage of the game. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Gamer Jim, baby. It's just me. What do you want? I'll catch you guys next time.